Hello and welcome to Game Sharks. That's right. Thank you for checking us out. This is QCTV's resident video game show. We're in 2022. It's a new year. Thank goodness. We have lots of things to be grateful and excited about, but we want to look back just a little bit and look at some of the good and the bad that we played in the world of video games in 2021. Joining us, I have a panel of some good, friendly folks. Anthony Bettin from WCCO, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Cory.
Yeah. And all the way in Burbank, California, joining us, my favorite co-host, Jimmy. Good. How you doing, Jimmy?
I'm fine. How are you guys doing today?
Doing good. So I'm back in your chair.
Yeah.
How did this happen?
It's our chair.
Our
right?
chair.
That's the way I'm putting
I'll keep it warm for next time.
I put both our names underneath it. There's a piece of tape that says, if you look, it's
right.
there. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. Yeah, but I'm back in California now, and you're like, hey, you should remote in. And I'm like, let's do it. We've got the technology. We can do these things.
That's right. Yeah, big shout out to the team here for patching Jimmy in through Zoom and making this look really nice. CJ, John, Leslie, Billy behind the scenes, we really appreciate you guys making this work. So without further ado, we're going to get right into this. We have a lot to talk about. There was some good and some bad in 2021 in the world of video games, as we know. I think it really varies. It depends on your personal tastes and what you are into. I thought it was a great year, personally. I know 2022 is going to be an even bigger year. If we have time, we'll go over some of the big stuff that's coming in 2022. But let's do some housekeeping things before we get into our top five. So the way this is going to work, we're going to go around. We're going to just rattle off our top fives, do a little discussion, and obviously we're going to talk about what our favorite game of the year was. So we'll get down to business here. Let's start with Jimmy. Jimmy, before we get into the meat of this discussion, let's fatten this discussion a little bit.
Yeah.
And let's talk about, some of the games that didn't make your top five, some honorable mentions, and one thing that you really wanted to play but didn't have a chance to, and something that you were bummed out by. I want to hear it.
Okay, let's start with the vegetables. Bummed out by, if that's okay. I really wanted to be excited about Back 4 Blood, and it was a bit rougher than I thought it was going to be. I'm a really big Left 4 Dead fan, and Left 4 Dead 2, they were like my high school games. Like, they came out at the perfect time, and I absolutely adored them. But Back 4 Blood didn't really completely recapture that magic. It's not a bad game, but I think in 6 months or a year, it's going to be hopefully where I want it to be as a game. But the nice thing was it was on Game Pass, so I had Game Pass, so I got to play it that way. So it was kind of bittersweet. It wasn't as painful as it would have been had I actually purchased the full game. But I don't remember if you guys played. Did you guys play Back 4 Blood?
Anthony, I'll let you go ahead.
Yeah, I did. I played a little bit of Back 4 Blood. I kind of had a similar response to you, which is like, it was fine. It was fun. I think the thing that really stands out is there's so many of those games now. Like when Left 4 Dead came out and Left 4 Dead 2, it was really the only type of that game that was out. But now there's so many of these co-op shooters. Me and my brothers-in-law play Deep Rock Galactic a lot, which is a similar one, but like so much better than Back 4 Blood. So like we played a little bit of Back 4 Blood, but then we were like, well, let's just go back to Deep Rock.
Yeah, Deep Rock's great. They had a huge expansion to it recently for free or something, an update or something. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Oh, so cool. Yeah, so that's probably, as far as my disappointments go, that's kind of probably the biggest one for me. But I did want to mention a game or two that I didn't get to play that looked really cool that I wanted to try. I've heard nothing, I should say I've heard a few mixed things about it, but mostly good about Returnal. And I remember seeing this and I was like, oh, it's such a pretty looking game. This kind of third-person shooter roguelike. But I remember thinking, oh yeah, I don't have a PlayStation 5, so that's just that's not going to happen.
And everybody else. Anthony,
I know,
fun
right?
Fact, we're the only two that own a PS5.
That's right.
On planet Earth.
Yeah.
That's a fact. It's a true fact.
We got the only two.
So you guys,
we're the only two. Yeah, we
you guys
really
both played it then,
those.
right?
Yeah, we could make
could
a
be
nice profit.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, they made games just for you guys.
Yeah.
So sorry, Jimmy, go ahead. You talked about your most disappointing.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And you talked about Returnal. It's one that you wanted to play for the PlayStation 5. Anything else that didn't make your top 5 that you wanted to rattle off?
I did want to rattle these last two quickly, which are Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart, and then also Resident Evil Village.
Nice.
A little too spooky for me, but I respect it. I really respect that game. Yeah, for sure. And we talked about it a lot here on the show, I think, a while ago, didn't we?
Yeah, we sure did. Well,
yeah, so those ones.
I'm sure you'll get to play Returnal and Resident Evil Village or 8, depending on how you want to call it.
Exactly.
Same game, yeah. Anthony, how about you? Some housekeeping stuff.
Yeah, I'll start with my honorable mentions. I wanted to mention 2 games that aren't on my top 5 list, but I really enjoyed this year. One is Psychonauts 2, which we talked about on the show before, so I won't say too much about it. But I just think it tells a really good story. I think the gameplay is leaps and bounds above the first Psychonauts, and it was also on Game Pass, so I got to play it for quote-unquote free. So people should definitely check that out. Another Game Pass game that is an honorable mention, but not on my top 5, is Forza Horizon 5. We've talked a lot on the show about how none of us are like really big racing game people, but I've always been curious about the Forza franchise. I played a little bit of Forza Horizon 4, but couldn't really get into it. But this one really grabbed me. I ended up playing quite a bit of it. So yeah, just wanted to mention those 2 honorable mentions. In terms of most disappointing game, this one's kind of weird for me because it's a game I did like. It is Deathloop. The opening hours of Deathloop are so promising and so cool, and it's just like nothing you've ever played before. And then the last 2 hours of that game just really nosedive. They really crash. The gameplay gets really bottled. The story gets really disappointing. There's a couple twists that I didn't like, and then like the ultimate ending of the story, I won't spoil it, but I just was so let down by it. And then a game I didn't get to play, I was gonna say Returnal, but I have a copy of Returnal at home. I just haven't started it up yet. But I'll say Resident Evil Village. I loved Resident Evil 7, really enjoyed that game, and have wanted to play Resident Evil Village, but just haven't gotten around to it yet, so.
Fair enough. Good to know. Yeah, I'm with you, Anthony. My most disappointing game was also Deathloop. My reasons were a little different than yours. Going into Deathloop, I had super high expectations. I mean, the critical response to that game was off the charts. I was reading Perfect 10 reviews, like this game's a masterpiece. I read one review that compared it to Breath of the Wild, like how it's changing the landscape of gaming. And I was like, okay. And then I started playing it. It's fine. It's a very system-heavy game.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of text. There's a lot of deep, really busy menus with very small, fine print. Did you have an issue with the print in the menus of that game?
I didn't, but
Okay.
I played it on a brand new 65-inch television, so. But I can definitely see how that would be a complaint. Yeah.
Yeah, I sit a little further back. That's fine. And, and again, this is probably some of this is on me. I set my expectations too high. I'm only a few hours into the game. I think it's fine. I'm also not a huge fan of time looping games. We'll get into that a little bit later with Returnal. But just to keep this conversation going, my honorable mentions were It Takes Two, Aliens, Fireteam Jimmy, and I had some excellent good times with that game, and we're going to continue to. Halo Infinite and Guardians of the Galaxy. Super great games. They just didn't make my top 5. The one that got away that I really wanted to play that I didn't have a chance to was Kenna Bridge of Spirits. So that's one that I am definitely excited to play. I just didn't have time. So any other housekeeping stuff that you guys missed before we get into our kind of top 5 game of the year discussion?
I don't think so.
Okay,
No.
awesome. Jimmy, let's start with you. What was your 5th best game that you played in 2021?
Okay, you made me rank them, which is so
Yes.
hard. And it's so funny, Cory, because at the beginning you said this was like a really good year, and for me, weirdly, I didn't think it was as compelling of a year, but there were still some really good games for sure. And starting at number 5 is Forza Horizon 5.
Nice.
Anthony was talking about it earlier. I'm not a really big racing game fan, but I found myself really enjoying this one. It's very arcadey, very forgiving. That rewind feature, I did use it a couple of times. I won't lie to you. But I found it to be really engaging and fun. And again, it was on Game Pass, so I was like, why not try it out and give it a shot? And I really enjoy the Horizon games over like the regular Forza, like on a track games. It's kind of more my speed. And I had a lot of fun with it. And Cory, I don't remember if you tried it out or not.
I thought it was delightful. I thought it was a super fun racing game. The thing with me is I just get so bored so quickly. I get excited about these games, and I'm just like, okay, the cars look very nice, the environments look very pretty, but I'm just still driving a car. And it is what it is. I heard someone compare this to like a Tony Hawk game. I didn't see that. To me, it was just still felt like a driving game, but totally respect it, and I'm glad people liked it.
That's an interesting. You keep calling it a driving game, which I think is like so true about Forza, because the racing is like, to me, is the least interesting part of that game.
Right.
Like the best part of that game is driving between the races and all the different events and seeing just the beautiful vistas and the cool cars, and then you get the race. You do the racing to unlock more cars and that kind of thing. But yeah, I really think it is like a driving game first and foremost.
I mean, that's what you're doing. You're driving a car
Yep.
in that game. So
I love taking like a Lamborghini and driving it off road and then getting a bunch of like points for doing nothing, just like driving through cacti.
Yeah.
It's just like the score multiplier is going up, and I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm doing it well. It's a good game.
The only other thing I'll say about Forza 5 was going into that, people were like, oh, it's the most beautiful next-gen game you'll ever see. I didn't see that personally. I mean, how pretty can you make a realistic driving game look? I feel like we hit the threshold probably on the last generation with racing games, with maybe even the last Forza game. I just felt like it didn't look that much better than any other racing game that I had seen. I don't know if that's fair. Maybe I'm off on that, but excellent pick, Jimmy.
Thank you.
It seems like people are loving that game. So. Anything else regarding Forza, Jimmy, on your top 5 before we move on?
Only last thing I want to say about it is I appreciate the induction of not only the classical music, but they put Mars, Bringer of War from whole planets in there. So sometimes when you're driving around, you get some nice, really good, perfectly pitched classical music while you're driving around slamming into other cars, because I play for keeps. And that's just how I play. And I get really angry when the avatars of my friends who aren't playing this game are beating me in the game. And I'm like, you're not even playing this game. How are you so much better than me?
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. Gotta love classical music. Anthony, what was your number 5 game, fifth best game you played last year?
Yeah, you actually mentioned it a few minutes ago. I'm going to go with Halo Infinite at 5. I think the game probably would have made my list based on the multiplayer alone, which they released about a month before the campaign. I just think that multiplayer mode is so good. I don't play a lot of competitive shooters. I used to play a lot of Apex Legends. I played a little bit of the Call of Duty Modern Warfare reboot from 2019. But this one is it's so much different than any other shooter out there. It's more of an arena type thing rather than, like the progression skill-based kind of thing. And it's just really fun. The shooting feels really good. The maps are really well designed. But then the campaign came out and I played the campaign, and the campaign is also excellent. It's just so much fun to move around in that world. The grappling hook is great. I think, I'm not the first person to make this point, but you could put a grappling hook in any game and it would instantly make it better. But this one is really, really good. It actually, the campaign and the gameplay reminded me of what I wish Doom Eternal had been. Because it's fast-paced. You're always moving. You're constantly having to engage enemies. I think the campaign falters a little bit towards the end. The open world stuff kind of wears thin, and then the last few missions are really long and drawn out. I loved Halo Infinite, and it's my 5th best game of the year.
Yeah, I also love Halo. I think so far it's been my favorite campaign. Just the two-punch combo of the grappling hook and the freedom to explore. You're less restricted than in previous, Halo games. Jimmy, I have a feeling this is going to show up on your list a little bit later.
Maybe.
Before we move on to my 5th game, do you want to say anything about Halo, or do you want to reserve your comments for a little bit later?
No, we'll do it now.
Okay.
Yeah, I think Halo is definitely deserving. At least it's on my list as well, somewhere higher up. But as Anthony was saying, the grapple hook, it's incredible. It's a game changer, and this game makes you feel like the Master Chief. And another point that I want to kind of tip my hat to with Anthony is that Doom never made me feel, or especially Doom Eternal, didn't make me feel like the Doom guy as much as Halo Infinite makes me feel like Master Chief. And I absolutely love the game for that. I think the campaign's really fun. I think this is just the beginning of something special and new for that franchise. And also the multiplayer it is just spot on. It is just so much fun. It can be frustrating, but it's so fair. It's hard to find a more fair first-person shooter out there right now. So that's what I would say about Halo Infinite.
Awesome. Excellent. I also love Halo. Just didn't make my top 5, so that was an honorable mention for me. I'm still working through it, though. I did buy the Battle Pass. Is that the appropriate term for the multiplayer?
I think so, yeah.
Yep. It's just really nice to be playing Halo again, and I'm happy they delayed it.
Yes,
seems
absolutely.
like that. After seeing what happened with Cyberpunk 2077, I think they made the right call to delay that game, and it seems like everybody's loving it. So. And
I think it's worth mentioning too. The big reason, one of the big reasons for the delay was they had that big public showing where everyone criticized how bad the game looked. I think it looks great now.
It's beautiful.
I think the delay really helped them out. The Master Chief character model is like maybe the best looking thing I've ever seen in a video game.
Yeah.
I just wanted to mention that before I moved on.
Awesome. So my fifth game, the fifth best game I played in 2021 was Resident Evil 4 VR. See, I got you there. You thought I was going to say Village. I pulled a fast one on you.
You got us.
I'm sorry. Resident Evil 4, still one of my favorite games ever. Came out on the GameCube, I think in 2001. I'll correct myself with the graphic if I made a mistake there, but this is probably the best VR. It's really not a port. It's more of a reimagining of that game. So it's been converted to a first-person perspective, obviously. Developed by Armature Studios, who is a combination of old retro developers who did the Metroid Prime series. So here you have Resident Evil 4, one of the most beloved game of all time, worked on and developed by people that worked on the Metroid Prime series. So I thought that was a really cool marriage. It's a really fun, well-polished VR experience. It's still terrifying, and it's the full game. So they didn't just take that game and just make like an experience, like a VR experience, which they totally could have. They could have just taken a section of that game and made that a short VR experience, but no, it's the full game. It's awesome. Jimmy, did you play, I know you don't have an Oculus Quest 2. That's where I played Resident Evil 4 VR. Did you play the original Resident Evil 4?
I did, yes. I actually did that a few years ago, weirdly, and it holds up pretty well, I'll be honest with you. Yeah. I liked it. It's good.
Awesome. I mean, it was mind-blowing at the time. When that game came out, it was like, nobody had ever seen anything like that. Did you play Resident Evil 4 at all in any shape or form?
Yeah, I played it many, many years ago. Not all of it. I never finished it, but played quite a bit of it.
Awesome. Well, I totally recommend if you're going to do it, play Resident Evil 4 first, obviously. And if you get around to getting an Oculus Quest 2, this is an Oculus Quest 2 exclusive. So, yeah, the meta universe.
You're a madman.
Something I don't ever want to say again.
I can't believe you want to play that game in virtual reality. I don't want all those people running at me in that village in the beginning. That's so freaky. No thanks,
it's truly wonderful, and it definitely deserved to be. Nobody talked about it. You didn't hear about it very much. I think all three of us are pretty tuned in to the gaming. Is it still called gaming journalism media? However you want to call it. We all listen to gaming podcasts, and you just don't hear it mentioned very often.
Yeah.
So I wanted to show it some love.
Yeah, I have a question for you before we move on.
Yeah.
Is the knife swinging? Do you have to do this? Is that how the knife works, or can you go like
So
can you do that?
That's a good question. One thing I will say is the accessibility menu is plentiful, so they'll give you options on how you really want to play the game. You can use button controls, you can swipe. They give you a lot of options. So it's really up to you on how you want to play. The only thing that obviously you have no control over is obviously you're wearing a VR, headset. So the way you're viewing the experience won't change, but the way you play it is really up to you. Lots of different control options. If that answers your question. So
I think so. I just want to know if instead of doing that little swipe thing Leon always does, that I can run at someone going stab it and be like, get away from me, get him back.
That's the beauty of VR. If you want to do that, they will let you do that.
Beautiful.
So,
Perfect.
Resident Evil 4 VR, awesome game. Jimmy, your number 4. What was the fourth best game you played last year?
And it's a game that I didn't get to play enough of, but that is Monster Hunter Rise. Talking about grapple hooks, they really went all out with the whole the wire bug in this game. And I'm a huge Monster Hunter World. To me, is one of the greatest video games of all time. I think it's maybe one of the best things mankind has ever created. If aliens showed up, I might give them that game and say this is probably the best representation of what we can make. But Monster Hunter Rise felt like, they do these offshoots with Monster Hunter. I'm still new to the franchise about, hunting and kind of harvesting parts of monsters to go fight bigger and scarier monsters. But this was kind of novel, and I think a few of the things they introduced here, like the wire bug, being able to kind of zap around like Spider-Man, or actually mount a monster and kind of drive it, basically, or steer it around and use it to fight other monsters. It's such a cool thing, and I'm really hopeful that they take the good from this game and apply it to the next Monster Hunter World game, or whatever that's going to be in the mainline series, and maybe kind of avoid some of the things where they have these kind of like tower defense segments that people weren't super keen on, where monsters just kind of run towards the gate and you just shoot them with like ballistas and stuff. Not as cool as far as the hunting goes for Monster Hunter, but I still think such a cool game. And it was on the Switch, like Switch exclusive, for a long time there. And it was like, wow, it's crazy to have a Monster Hunter. Obviously it wasn't as, pretty or refined as World was, but cool to see Monster Hunter come and be portable like that in this way still to this day. But yeah, like I said, Monster Hunter Rise, good game, but I'm just excited for the implications of it down the road. Yeah, it was a good game.
Awesome. Good choice, Jimmy.
Thank you.
That sounds fantastic. Not a big Monster Hunter fan myself. I don't have a whole lot to say. That sounds great to me, though. Anthony, do you have anything to say on Monster Hunter Rise?
Yeah, I played a little bit of Monster Hunter Rise. I also really enjoyed it. It came out, I think, just before new Pokemon Snap, if I remember correctly. And so I started playing Monster Hunter Rise and then switched to new Pokemon Snap. Always meant to go back to Monster Hunter Rise, but haven't yet. But did really enjoy my time with it. I'm also a big fan of Worlds, so.
Awesome. Anything else regarding Monster Hunter, Jimmy, before we move on?
No, I don't think so. It's just Nergigante is the greatest monster. I'm just gonna say there. It's the best Elder Dragon. I don't think he's in that game though. I don't know. I'd have to go check. But I'm excited, man. Just more Monster Hunter. Cory, I'm gonna convert you into Monster Hunter. Don't you worry.
I'm open-minded, so you can certainly try. Anthony, what was the fourth best game that you played in 2021?
My number 4 game is Unpacking.
Unpacking.
I think you played a little bit of this, Cory.
A little bit.
I'm not sure if Jimmy, you played this at all, but it's a really, really neat and sweet little indie game. The basic premise of it is you are unpacking this woman's belongings at different points throughout her life. So you unpack her childhood room, then she goes to college. I won't say everywhere it goes because that's part of the joy of the game. But from the storytelling perspective, it's just so economical and so innovative in the way it tells this full, rich story with such limited gameplay mechanics. And also, it tells you the broad outline of the story, but then you as a player have enough agency to fill in your own, little quirks and things like that. And beyond that, the gameplay is just really satisfying. The unpacking and clicking and putting it where you want to go is really, really neat. It feels really good. The art is great. So yeah, it was just a really, really sweet experience. Very brief. I think I beat it in maybe 2 or 3 hours, but really, really impactful.
Yeah, I love Unpacking. I think I mentioned to you earlier in the year when I was playing it that I stopped on Switch because I thought it would be so great to play on PC with actual dragging the items around with a mouse. I love the pixel art in that game. It's just delightful. Can't wait to get back to it. Jimmy, did you try out Unpacking?
I haven't tried it. I have seen it though, and I've heard only good things. So it's nice to see that echoed here.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I meant to say I played on Game Pass. But I dropped it to play it on PC. So I think it's also on the PC Game Pass.
Yes, that's where I played it.
On Windows. Oh, that's where you played it. Okay,
Yep.
Awesome.
Yep.
Fantastic. Anything else regarding packing before we move on? Good.
I don't think so. I urge everyone at Game Pass to play it.
Yeah.
Like I said, it's very brief, so it only takes a couple hours of your time, and I think most people really like it.
Nice. Good choice. Again, I just love the pixel art in that
Yeah.
game. So my number 4 is Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart. This is the game when people come over and they want to see what a PS5 game looks. This is the one I put on because it's absolutely stunning. It's just a charming, delightful game. It's they're not doing anything revolutionary. It's the same kind of planet hopping, 3D platforming, weapon heavy, goofy, silly game. It's straight out of a Pixar film. The animation is stunning. Just from a visual standpoint, it's truly remarkable and super polished, really fun to play. I think Insomniac is just killing it in the modern era of video games with Ratchet and Clank and Spider-Man. Now we're getting Wolverine. Jimmy, you mentioned obviously that was one of the ones that slipped away for you, so you're eventually going to play Ratchet and Clank.
That's the hope. Yeah, that's the plan. I have been a Ratchet and Clank fan before it was cool. Let me just say that. I don't want to be like, no, I'm just kidding. I really love those games, the PS2 games, Going Commando and then Up Your Arsenal. Such wonderful games. And to see that Insomniac has continued to be this kind of powerhouse for Sony is great to see. And I've just heard people talk about this game almost with a reverence where they're like, I didn't even move the controller after the cutscene was done, and they were like, "Oh no, I can play the game now." They're like, "I didn't realize I was in control." Right. And I always love the crazy, wacky weapons. What was the weapon arsenal bigger in this one? Because I've heard in the past some of these games they've kind of gone more for the technical prowess versus like going really insane with the weapons, and the weapons are kind of like the big draw for me personally.
I don't think you'll be disappointed, Anthony. You can attest to this, but correct me if I'm wrong. There's 2 wheels full of weapons to choose from.
I believe that's
There's like
right.
6 or 7 weapons per wheel.
Yeah, I
So
think that's
we're
right.
talking, and again, I didn't purchase all of the weapons that were available to me. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, and Ratchet and Clank will show up later on my list, actually, a little higher up. But
Yeah.
I did purchase all the weapons.
Okay.
Because I think one thing I really like about that game is they really encourage you to experiment with all the weapons.
Right.
There are certainly like favorites I have that I would use most often, but the game is really good about sort of limiting your ammo and putting you in situations where certain weapons are more effective. But they're all great. I mean, they're all fun and funny and interesting. Yeah, that game, I mean, I guess I'll talk about it now since we're talking about it, that it's, like you said, it's one of the, if not the best looking game ever made. I was just blown away the first time I loaded it up. The gameplay is so good, the controls are so tight, it does some really cool things with the PS5's, like, what's the technical term for that? Like
Light bar,
yeah.
light bar, I suppose.
Well, that and the rumble too, and like the
haptic
adaptive
feedback.
triggers. Yeah,
Haptic feedback, yeah, the triggers, yeah.
That stuff feels really good. It's probably, besides Astro's Playroom, it's probably the game that has utilized that the best.
Totally.
But yeah, it's just a really bombastic. It's like the equivalent of like a blockbuster film. It's really fun, and I've said this many times on the show before, but I really appreciate when a game knows how long it should be and it doesn't outlast its welcome. And Ratchet and Clank is the perfect length.
Yeah, some really awesome new characters. We have obviously the Rivet is a new character that's fantastic, and she is a new playable Lombax character. So shout out to Insomniac for giving you options for characters that you can switch between. Also, the other really impressive thing about this game is they're harnessing the power of the SSD in the PS5. So it's just like load times are non-existent.
Yeah.
It, like Jimmy said, it goes from a cutscene to a gameplay sequence, instantly, and it kind of messes with your brain a little bit. You're like, whoa, the gameplay looks like the cutscene.
Yeah.
And I haven't seen very many games that have actually pulled that off. Spider-Man was one.
Yeah.
Another Insomniac game. Sorry, go ahead, Anthony.
No, I was just going to say, connected to what you were saying, one of the new mechanics in the game is these portals, because part of the plot concerns different dimensions and alternate universes and stuff like that. And so there are, it almost serves as a grappling hook, actually, like in the combat scenarios where you hook onto a portal, zap through it, and you're either in a different place or the world has changed, and all that stuff happens nearly instantaneously. Like it's so fast that it's unnoticeable. And yeah, it's really, really impressive that they were able to take advantage of the PS5 hardware like this so early in its life cycle. This is a game that I think you would expect to see a year or two down the line, but it was, 6 months after the console came out, so.
Awesome. Well, Jimmy, I can't wait for you to play Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart, and we'll have to check in with you later. But let's get on to our top 3. We're in our top 3. Jimmy, what was the 3rd best game that you played last year?
Okay. We were talking about Back 4 Blood earlier, and I want to talk about a game that I think does it better, and maybe wouldn't be in the top 3 for most people. But Cory, you mentioned it earlier as well. That is Aliens Fireteam Elite.
Nice.
This game.
Good choice.
I'm not even the biggest Aliens fan. But I can still respect and appreciate how much love they have for not only the original Alien and Aliens, but also for Prometheus and Alien Covenant. Like, there's a lot of kind of nods and attention to detail with this game for those other films, which were kind of a little more divisive, but it was kind of cool to see that world again. But it's, third-person co-op shooter, just like a really fun blend of just like not only an intellectual property, but also just really fun, straightforward gameplay. It's not anything more than it says it is, and I kind of appreciate that it's just like a classic video game. And I just love playing it. Obviously, way better with friends, but playing with the little, the androids, that's okay too. Shout out to Alpha. He does what he can. Not always the best, but he'll revive you if you go down. But yeah, there's like 3 or 4 campaigns with a couple of missions within them, and then there's a horde mode. So it's a pretty decent, robust thing for $40, and now it's on Game Pass. And you know what? I didn't feel bad buying this one, and I was like, you know what? I think this is a game that more people should get the chance to experience. And if you haven't tried it, again, kind of just the whole show is just going to be, and over the years, it's going to be more and more like, if you have Game Pass, you should try it. But yeah, if you do, you really should try it. It's a great game. And Cory and I, we've had some good times on there so far, haven't we, buddy?
I think you nailed it. So this is definitely the James Cameron Aliens, right? This is much less of the Ridley Scott. This is, I didn't want to say it, but balls to the walls. It's the only term that comes to my mind, because it's just so over the top. It's so insane. They nailed the look and especially the sound effects of that movie cinematic franchise. Jimmy obviously played a lot more of this game than I did. Some of the highlights for me of that game were the conversations you and I had. Obviously, those were the most memorable parts of playing that game was with you. But I can't wait to get back in Aliens. It was an honorable mention for me only because I didn't play it a whole lot. Is this on your radar, Anthony? Is this something you're gonna play? Or?
Yeah, funnily enough, Jimmy mentioned it just came to Game Pass. Me and my brothers-in-law just downloaded it this week, so we're planning on checking it out tonight. So I'm very excited. Yeah,
it's very fun, and I love that Jimmy mentioned Prometheus. Okay, Prometheus has a lot of problems, but it's underrated in my book, and I love that movie, and I'm glad that they paid homage to Prometheus in Aliens. Jimmy, anything else regarding Aliens before we move on?
Last two things, Anthony, just keep this in mind. There are some different classes, so it's good to have a robust team. Everybody plays a different thing. And also, I want to go on record saying this. I think it might just have the greatest flamethrower in any video game ever.
I agree.
Wow.
I love it so much. And I am
good.
a flamethrower boy.
Wow.
I love my flamethrowers, but it is so good, man. Melting Xenos. Ooh. Oh boy.
I can't wait.
They deserve a lot of credit. They did a great job with it. So
Good call on
good.
the flamethrower. Totally agree. Thank you, Jimmy. Good pick. Can't wait to play more Aliens with you. Anthony, what was the third best game you played last year?
My third best game also features a lot of aliens, but it's not Fireteam Elite. It's Metroid Dread.
Nice.
The first Metroid game in I don't even know how many years.
Yeah.
And it looks great on the Switch. It plays incredible. The story is a Metroid story, but it has some really, really good moments in it. Cory, you and I talked about how cool the ending is. There's a couple cool twists and a couple good moments in there. Samus she controls so well. This, aside from maybe Hollow Knight, this is probably the best feeling 2D action game I've ever played. The sort of 360-degree aiming you can do with the two sticks feels really good. The boss fights are incredible. Everyone is gonna push you to your limits, but it kind of has that Dark Souls Bloodborne thing where every time you die, you know what you did wrong, you know it was your fault, and you know what you have to do next time to be better. We were texting back and forth. I think the final boss fight took me maybe 24 tries before I finally bested it. But I wasn't frustrated or throwing my controller. I was excited to get back in and give it another shot. So. You played a little bit too, right? Cory, you beat it.
Yes, I did. This is going to show up in my list a little bit later, but we can get into it. The greatest gaming moment for me, period, last year was that final Metroid Dread boss, because I think I mentioned to Jimmy and you, I dropped that game. I play all the Dark Souls game. I play Bloodborne, and I always, except for Sekiro, but I always manage to get past it, and it's that level of satisfaction that you conquered something that you didn't think that you could accomplish. And so the fact that I dropped that game and I loved it, and going back to it and I finally beat that boss was extremely satisfying. Nothing had topped the feeling of finishing that game for me in 2021. But I agree with everything else you said about Metroid Dread. The thing with recent Metroid games is they haven't been very good. It's been a long time since we've had a really good Metroid game. Probably going back to the Prime trilogy, or maybe even the Game Boy Advance with Fusion, maybe. Yeah. If we're gonna enter the 2D Metroid conversation. So it's been a really long time. So it was, for me as a lifelong Metroid fan. Really, I've been playing these games since 1989. God, I just dated myself, but it was remarkable to see them come back, develop by Mercury Steam. They just nailed it. Jimmy, did you get a chance to play Metroid Dread on the Switch this year?
I did not.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I don't have the same love for Metroid. I have a respect
problem.
for it, though.
No
and
problem.
I know so many people were talking about this one. And I remember seeing it pop up. And at first, people were like, okay, it's like a classic Metroid.
Yep.
And we'll see how it is. And then everyone was like, oh my gosh, this is incredible. We missed it so much. So it's nice to see Nintendo put that out, especially with Metroid Prime 4 and whatever else kind of like getting pushed away for a while. So it's like, hey, Metroid's here.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, and it's just some absolutely insane story stuff. Too,
Yeah.
that I just did not expect. Like, there's a twist at the end that obviously I won't spoil. It was like, wait, what?
Yeah.
It's just crazy things you wouldn't expect from a 2D Metro game, but it's extremely intense. The Emmy stuff is really well done. It can get annoying, but again, like you said, Anthony, the boss fights are remarkable. The game looks and feels fantastic. It feels like a game that they worked on for like a decade.
Yeah.
It's so polished. It's so well done. That ending boss fight is so memorable. Yeah, I absolutely adore Metroid Dread. Anything else regarding Metroid before we move on?
I don't think so. I think, it's a must play if you're a Switch owner and especially if you're a Metroid fan. So.
Yep, absolutely. So that's it. We're moving on?
Yeah.
Okay, so my number 3 was Death's Door. Did you guys play Death's Door? Did you guys get a chance
No, I
to play
didn't.
Death's Door?
No, I haven't touched it.
So Death's Door is a Zelda-like 2D indie game developed by Acid Nerve. This is a Devolver published game. But you know, when I think of some of my favorite indie games, you know, like Inside, you know, I would put this very high up there with like Super Meat Boy, some of the really high-end indie games that just feel really great to play. So this is a Zelda Dark Souls-like game. You play as a sword-wielding bird, and you work for a corporation that reaps souls. So you have like an office job, and you're in an office environment, but then you go into these little portals and you go into these worlds, you fight bosses, you fight enemies, and it's very challenging. It's very well done. I'll put some B-roll up on the screen. That's why I asked you guys right off the bat if you played this, so you had a frame of reference. Are you familiar with this game at all? We'll start with Anthony. Are you familiar with Death's Door at all?
Yeah.
Okay.
I've heard, I've heard podcasts talk about it, and I've seen some footage of it. It
Yeah.
looks really cool. The art style is great.
Yeah, it's
I've
beautiful.
definitely been curious about it.
Yeah, it definitely scratches that Zelda / Dark Souls itch, where it's got some really challenging boss fights that, you know, are really satisfying to finish, and obviously you get some good rewards, mixed with some dungeon exploration type stuff that you would see in like a 2D Zelda game. So we'll move on. Obviously, you guys didn't play Death's Door. I highly recommend it. Absolutely love that game. Jimmy, what was the second best game that you played in 2021?
All right, so the second best game. Before I say it, though, I do want to echo what Anthony said. A lot of people I've heard love Death's Door. I've heard the music's really good, too.
Yep.
So that's really cool to hear that, like, an indie team, a lot of people talking about a game like that, Game of the Year.
Yeah,
we talked about
absolutely.
this game before, but it's Halo Infinite. It was going to be number 1, but there's one game that, for me personally, I prefer better. But Halo Infinite, pretty much everything we said before, it's just such a fun, wonderful game. So well polished. I'm glad they took the year to kind of, really, really make sure it was ready to go. And again, kudos to Microsoft for holding back on that, because I don't know, like, if you're launching a new console and you could launch it with Halo, I think like 99 times out of 100, that would happen. But the fact that they didn't really is, I don't know, just a lot of respect for not only the consumers, but for Halo as, a property too. And I'm just so happy with what they've made, and I'm excited to see where it goes. A few issues here. I didn't get the battle pass like Cory did, so there's like a lot of times where I'll like level up in the multiplayer, and it's like, well, you get this thing for free, but here's the thing you could have gotten with the battle pass. And I'm like, but unfortunately, the armor doesn't make me a better player. So I just like leave that to the side. I'm just like, I just have to be okay with the armor I have. But it's such a fun game, and I'm excited to see them continue to add on to it. I hope they bring back Griff Ball. I hope they bring back some of my favorite weapons from the other games. Man, it's such a killer game. I love it so much. It's super good. If you have Game Pass, check it out. It's so good.
Yeah, good pick. Obviously, we talked about Halo a little bit earlier. I still can't wait to get back to that game. It's just so fun. It's just great to have Halo back. Any other closing thoughts on Halo? Might come up later, maybe not, but if not, we'll conclude the Halo chapter of this video.
Yeah, we can wrap it up. I'll just echo what Jimmy said. I'm very curious to see the future of that game.
Yeah.
Because it kind of seems like they're trying to make it into a platform like a Fortnite or a Call of Duty Warzone. But obviously, the campaign is such a key part of Halo. So I'm very curious to see what the future of Halo is after that.
Absolutely, completely agree. Jimmy, do you want to say anything else about Halo Infinite before we move on?
Just waiting for that co-op campaign and Forge mode, baby.
Yeah.
Then there's like a lot of people I've talked to, they're like, I can't wait to play it, but I want to play it with you in co-op. And I'm like, I'm ready. Let's go around and hunt some Banished, baby.
Yeah.
Let's go. I can't wait.
Totally.
Yeah.
Anthony, what was the second best game you played last year?
We already talked about it quite a bit, so I won't say too much more about it, but it's Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart. For
Nice.
a long time, this was going to be my game of the year, and then something I played last month, which we'll get to in a minute, totally just like came in and stole the show. But the one thing we didn't mention that I'll talk about a little bit is the story of Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart. It's not anything that's gonna, change your worldview or anything like that, but it's a really well-told story. It's got some really good characters. You mentioned Rivet. The kind of the Clank equivalent in the alternate universe, Kit, is also a really, really good character,
Right.
which with this really surprisingly emotional arc. So yeah, it's a game that if you have a PS5, you need to play it. There's no reason not to, unless I guess if you hate third-person platforms or something like that. But yeah, it's a really, really great game.
Yeah, I hope they keep making them. Obviously, I think we talked about this a couple episodes ago there. Our concern here on this show is that they were going to just turn into this Marvel factory.
Right.
Or they're just going to be making, Marvel properties from here on out. Obviously, I think we're all excited about the Wolverine game, and obviously Spider-Man 2 is coming. So yeah, they have two big games coming. They're both Marvel properties. So I hope they keep making Ratchet & Clank games. Yeah.
Yeah, agreed.
And Jimmy, you're still excited to play Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart.
Yeah. Well, I have to come to your house and play it, Cory, because you're one
Right.
of the only two PS5 owners on
that
the
is tricky.
planet.
I'm gonna start writing
tricky.
letters
yeah.
to Jim Ryan.
Yeah,
Jimmy.
yeah,
We're gonna
right.
get you a PS5.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I would love to play it at some point. Yeah, but I'm excited, and yeah, I just want to try out some of those weapons, baby. Oh,
Yeah.
I love them. You bring back the Rift Ripper. It was a black hole gun. Come
Yeah.
on, I need it. Unless
Yeah.
it's in the game. Maybe it is. I gotta play it.
That's not in it, but I won't spoil it.
No.
But there's something similar.
Yeah,
something
I was
really
gonna say
cool.
that too.
Yeah.
Jimmy, I don't think you'll be
Thank
disappointed
goodness.
with the weapon selection in this
No.
game.
I need
You
it.
can put
I
those
need a big
concerns to
arsenal.
rest. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, you're gonna
Good,
be
thank
happy
you,
with
thank
it. So the second best game that I played last year was Resident Evil Village. Obviously, we talked about Resident Evil 4 VR. That's a very different experience. Resident Evil Village, aka Resident Evil 8, depending on how you want to say it. Direct sequel to Resident Evil 7. So I love Resident Evil, the franchise, and I'm a sucker for old Universal monster movies like Dracula and Wolfman and all those kind of gothic horror films, and you get a lot of that in Resident Evil Village. So think snow-capped villages with gothic castles and all these crazy kooky characters, and a lot of callbacks to Resident Evil 4, which is my personal favorite game. In terms of crafting and having a vendor that you can go buy things from, which is very much a Resident Evil 4 thing. Jimmy, you're familiar with the merchant from Resident Evil 4, the what do you buying meme,
yeah.
so you're familiar with
What
that.
are you buying?
Exactly.
What are you selling?
Yeah, so you'll get a lot of that in Village. I absolutely loved it. I thought it was fantastic. It's visually stunning. A lot of great puzzle stuff, a lot of great combat mechanics, some survival horror stuff, obviously, since it is a Resident Evil game. Absolutely the second best game I played last year. Looking forward to playing it again. Anthony, let's start with you. Do you have any intentions on playing Resident Evil 8? I'm sorry, was that the one that slipped away for you?
Yes.
Okay,
yeah,
that was one of the ones you mentioned.
Yep, yeah, that and Returnal. I'm definitely excited to play Resident Evil 8. Like I said, I just played 7 for the first time this year, actually, and just adored it. I loved it. I thought it was so cool, so creepy. Yeah, Resident Evil Village is high on my list of when I have a free moment, I'm gonna go back to it.
Yeah, some of the werewolf sequences in that game are some of the highlights for me last year. Truly terrifying, truly obviously memorable experiences. Jimmy, are you a werewolf guy? Do you like vampires and all that sort of old-timey gothic horror stuff?
Oh yeah, I am. I don't know if I'm as big a fan of running from them as much as some other people are, but I remember playing the demo for this game and thinking like, wow, that was pretty freaky.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's such a cool game. I'd rather play it with other people.
Sure.
And in the middle of the day with the lights on, and maybe some nice calming music in the background, like to really ruin the experience for myself.
Yeah.
Otherwise, the rest of my month would just be me sitting up in bed, just like rocking, like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I don't want to be murdered by a werewolf.
Yeah, I played Resident Evil 7 in VR. Which was
you're a madman. You're an absolute madman. I love it though. I respect it.
Yeah, there was times where I had to take the headset off, like, okay, I don't know if I can do this, but then of course I get back into it. And I would say Resident Evil 8 is less creepy than 7. This is more of like a thrill ride experience, but obviously some of that creepy stuff is still there. This maybe could have been my game of the year, but it felt like it dragged on a little too long. You know, Chris, this is not a spoiler, but, you know, of course, Chris Redfield shows up and they do the goofy Resident Evil umbrella stuff. It's like, okay, this is fine, but it just felt a little long, but that would be my only complaint. Let's get into it. Jimmy, what was the number one, what was your game of the year from last year?
Now, gentlemen, and everybody watching this, game of the year should be something personal. You know, it might not necessarily be the greatest, most mechanical game or like an advancement for the industry or anything like that. The game of the year for me, which weirdly enough was the game that I've been talking about all year, and again, not gonna be the number one game for probably almost anyone else, but that's new Pokemon Snap.
Nice.
I didn't think I'd ever get a sequel to Pokemon Snap. I never thought I would ever get one. And the fact that they made one, I'm just so happy about it. Is the name kind of weird? Yeah. They probably should have just called it Pokemon Snap 2, but for some odd reason, they wanted people to know it's new. It basically enhances the old game in almost every way. It just takes that idea of you going on it. It's the best on-rail shooter. You basically just moving forward in a world and just taking pictures of Pokemon. You might throw stuff at them, you know, try to get them to do different things. There are alternate paths in this game, which are really cool too. There are day-night versions of most all of them as well. And there are a lot of secrets to be found. And it's just such a chill game. And for someone like me who loves like action and blowing stuff up and, you know, fighting a bunch of people, it's just like a nice change of pace. And I just think that was kind of a cool thing to have this year. And it runs pretty well on the Switch. To be honest, though, I usually play it in docked mode. But man, it's just such a cheery, kind of cozy game. And I love it. And it's just my personal favorite game of the year. So, yeah, there you go. New Pokemon Snap, baby.
Nice choice, Jimmy. I love the passion. Obviously, I'm not a Pokemon person. I know my wife was thrilled to get that game. I think she picked it up day one. I know we've talked about it on the show before. Anthony, I know you're a big Pokemon fan. You got a big grin on your face. Did you play Pokemon Snap? Is it 2 or new Pokemon Snap? Whatever it's called. Did you play Pokemon Snap this year?
I did, yeah. I need to go back to it. I never finished it. But I'm so glad you brought it up, Jimmy. I'm so glad it's getting some representation on the show. It's a really good game. The original Pokemon Snap is like one of my favorite games of all time. I play it through probably once a year. And I think the sequel's really good. The only reason it's not like on my list or I wasn't higher on it is I've like fallen off Pokemon in recent years. So like half the Pokemon I don't even know who they are anymore.
Yeah, right.
But it looks great on the Switch. It plays really well. It's exactly what you would want from a Pokemon Snap sequel. So excellent choice, Jimmy.
Thank you so much.
Totally agree.
One thing I appreciate too is they don't do this a lot for, especially Nintendo. They gave out like 1 or 2 free courses to the game. They like added a bunch of stuff for free. I was like, wait, what? I don't have to pay for this? It was like, no, here you go. You can have this. And I'm like, oh, thank you. Like, it's just weird to have that. I don't know if Nintendo has been doing more of that recently, but to get some more free stuff like that, I'm like, that really gets me to come back to your game. So well done. Well done, guys. I love it. Thank you for making a single-player game in the Pokemon universe again like this. I never thought we'd never get a sequel.
Yeah, it was definitely a surprise. I remember when they announced that, how just shocked people were. They're like, oh my God. It's an N64 game. Like, they're bringing this back. So, Jimmy, love the passion again. That's a great choice. Thank you for that. Anthony, what was the best game you played last year?
For me, it's Inscription. This game is so frustrating, not because of the gameplay or anything, but it's so frustrating because it's a game that I want to talk to everyone about, but I can't talk to anyone about.
You can talk to us about it.
Because the joy of it is the discovery of it. So to set it up, Inscription starts out as you are locked in this cabin, you see ahead of you this set of eyes in the darkness, and the set of eyes is like, play this card game with me. So you start playing this card game. The central conceit of the card game is not every card, but most cards have a blood cost. And so to play a card with a 1 cost blood, you have to sacrifice another card, and it's destroyed and it comes off your board. You can place another one. So you start playing this card game with this guy, and then really weird stuff starts happening, which I won't get into because, again, like, the best part of this game is all the left turns it takes, where you think you know what's going on, and then it just slaps you in the face, and it's like, you don't know anything, dude. And it's just... So it does that multiple times throughout the game. It's not like there's one big moment that drops your jaw. That happens, I think it took me about 15 hours to finish it, and that happened once an hour maybe. But the game wouldn't work, or it would work, but it would just be kind of a neat little thing if the core card game wasn't really fun. But it is. It's an awesome, awesome card game. It's the mechanics are really solid. The game is also really smart about allowing you to break the game. You can upgrade cards in different ways and add abilities to them that just become like ridiculously overpowered, but not in like a cheap way, in like a really fun way. The art is incredible. The music is really, really good. Like one of the best soundtracks definitely this year, maybe all time. The atmosphere is great. The opening is like really scary, like really creepy. And yeah, again, like I don't want to say too much about it because the best way to experience it is to just go in knowing nothing, just load it up and play it. But Inscription, it's like not only my game of the year, it's definitely like one of my favorite games of all time.
Wow.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, you're not alone. I've heard so many people talk about this game this year. I'm absolutely going to play it. And, you know, I've heard a lot of people say, like, don't be scared because you don't like card games. Like, this is not your typical, like, card game, like a Hearthstone or like poker or just any kind of, like, Uno game. You know, this is so different than anything you've experienced. Is that accurate?
Yes. Yeah. The mechanics are, like I said, they're really solid, but they're pretty simple. It's a simple to understand card game. It is also, the game wants you to experience the story and experience all the twists and turns. So if you are struggling, there are ways to basically cheat the game or overcome those obstacles. So yeah, even if you don't like card games, I think you'll still get a lot out of this game. Okay. Just because there's so much else around the card game. There's the atmosphere, and even so that first part of the game where you're in the cabin with the mysterious eyes, there's also like an escape room aspect to it. So if you like escape room games like that, I think you'll really enjoy that part of it.
Awesome. No, I can't wait to check this out. I think this game came out of nowhere and surprised so many people. I've seen this game show up on a lot of people's Game of the Year lists, especially at the top, which is kind of crazy. So I can't wait to check that out. Jimmy, have you played Inscription? Are you going to play Inscription?
I haven't. I have seen a lot of talk about it, and I'm aware of it. And I remember having kind of the striking visuals of it. I remember like seeing that back at like E3 or whatever, and I was like, "Wow, that actually looks pretty cool." Or whatever kind of thing they showed off for Devolver a while ago.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm happy to see that again. Another game that, you know, normally when we think Game of the Year, and I think next year there'll be more of this, where it's like your Breath of the Wild or like your FromSoft games like are like the #1 games, but it's cool that in a year that didn't have that kind of stuff, games like this one can rise up. And maybe even if it would have come out next year, maybe still people would have been talking about it. That's how cool this game is. But yeah, I have respect again for it. I don't know if I'll play it anytime soon, but I would like to try it at some point for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Same. Good pick. So platform, this is on PC only right now?
I believe it's PC exclusive. Okay. And I'll say that I think there's a reason for that. I won't go into why. But yeah, if you have a PC, I think it's $20. I think I got it on sale for $16.
Oh, nice.
And the best $16 I spent all year. So
this is a game where like a mouse and keyboard setup is probably the preferred way.
Definitely.
So if you're recommending this, and maybe it'll be ported in the future, maybe not, but you still think PC is the way to go with this.
I think so, yeah.
I mean, obviously that's the only choice you have right now. But in case people are like, oh, maybe it's coming to PlayStation, people that don't have access to a computer. Is this a graphics intense game? Is this a game that you would recommend to a casual person with just a pretty basic PC setup?
Yeah, it's not super graphics intensive, so
Okay.
I believe the bulk of the work was done by one guy named Daniel Mullins,
Cool.
at least the design part of it. The art style is really striking, really original, but it's definitely not graphics intensive. It's not a Halo
Okay.
Infinite or a Forza Horizon.
Awesome.
You should be able to play it on most machines, I would imagine.
That's great, because then it makes it more accessible
Yes.
for a larger audience to check it out. Inscription, good choice. Jimmy, you had Pokemon Snap. That was your game of the year. Anthony had Inscription, 2 great picks. My game of the year was Metroid Dread. I think that's not a surprise by the way I talked about it. Back in October, I was super grateful I was able to travel to Europe with my parents, and we'd go out during the day and we'd sightsee and do all this stuff, and we'd be exhausted at the end of the day, but I would be like exploring these churches that are like 600 years old, and I'm thinking about Metroid Dread. I'm like, here I am in like Prague in like these incredible, buildings, and I'm like, I want to go back to the hotel and play Metroid Dread. So I always looked forward to going back and playing that, and I think I mentioned to Anthony, and I mentioned this early on the show, I dropped that game because the end boss of that game is so hard, but it's all about, conquering something that you didn't think was possible, and then overcoming that obstacle was so satisfying. And you feel kind of silly at the end because in hindsight you look back and you're like, man, wasn't that hard? You just weren't paying attention. You have to pay attention. Nintendo needed a big win with this game, and I think they got it. Again, they've had some failures with recent iterations in the Metroid franchise. So it was awesome to see him hit a home run with Metroid Dread. So we already kind of discussed it, but that's all I got for you guys. I think it was a pretty good year. Jimmy, on a scale of 1 to 10, if you had to rate 2021, what would you give it? Just throw me a number.
21 out of 10. Yeah.
Nice. 21 out of 10. Nice.
No.
That's pretty good.
I'd probably say, as far as like video games are concerned,
Yeah.
I'd say it's like a 7 out of 10.
7
here.
out of 10. Okay.
You know what I mean?
Sure.
Yeah, it's pretty good. Pretty
Pretty
solid.
good? Yeah. Not amazing, but pretty good.
Yeah.
Anthony, if you had to give it a score.
Man, that's so tough because I agree that most of the year was probably a 7 or maybe an 8 out of 10. But Inscription for me, like I said, like it's not just my game of the year; it's one of my favorite games of all time. So like that rockets it up for me.
Escalates
But
that.
yeah, so I'll stick with an 8 though.
Yeah. I thought it was a tremendous year. I'd probably go with like a 9. I think some of my favorite games ever came out of that, with Metroid Dread, Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart, Resident Evil Village. I think these are heavy-hitting classics that I will probably revisit, and I can't wait to play those games again. Real quick before we wrap up, 2022, we have potentially God of War 2, Breath of the Wild 2, we have Elden Ring, we have a new Horizon game. Not a huge Bayonetta fan, but we have Bayonetta 3, which I know a lot of people are excited about. And I'm just touching the surface with what 2022 has to offer. Sounds like it's going to be a banger. Jimmy, what's the big thing you're looking forward to for 2022?
I hope Breath of the Wild 2 comes out.
Yeah.
I think it's like November, maybe. We'll see. I think Nintendo really, that's going to be the big flagship for them. If it isn't that, weirdly, I'm looking forward to Elden Ring. I just need to find people to play it with. Nobody wants to play it on Xbox. Everybody's on their PlayStation 5s or something. Apparently, you guys, there's more than 2 PlayStation 5s out there. But yeah, I'm looking forward to those 2. And again, 2 big open world games. That's just kind of what I'm into.
Yeah. And we're still in a pandemic too, so these, this could change.
never know.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah.
I fully
right.
expect at least some of these games to be delayed. If all the games that I just listed come out this year, this will already be an insane year. Anthony, if all goes well, what is the big thing you're looking forward to?
I mean, I am really looking forward to the Horizon sequel. I really like Horizon Zero Dawn, but for me, 2022, like Jimmy said, it's all about Elden Ring.
Yeah.
I am so excited for that game.
Me too.
I just got into the FromSoft games this year, but I cannot wait to get my hands on that thing.
Yeah, same. That's my pick. Jimmy, thank you for joining us for all the way in California. We really appreciate it.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I appreciate you guys having me. Thank you so much, and a huge thanks to the
course.
crew for making this happen. That's so cool.
Yeah, yeah, and thanks to Anthony for driving in the snow to get here today. We really appreciate it.
Yeah,
Have
thanks.
a safe trip back home. All right, thank you for checking out Game Sharks. For this and more, you can check out our YouTube channel, social media platforms, as well as our website at qctv.org. Thanks again.